am back with another informative educational video. Today I am going to teach class 12th English Flamingo Poetry 1. My Mother at 66. This poem is written by Kamla Das. So firstly, let me tell you about Kamla Das. Kamla Das was an Indian English poet and at the same time a leading Malayalam author from Kerala. Her popularity in Kerala is based chiefly on the short stories and autobiography. She won Kerala Sahitya Academy Award. So students, firstly, let me tell you about the theme of this poem. My Mother at 66 deals with advancing age and the fear of loss and separation associated with it. The poet undergoes a plethora of emotions when she sees her mother aging and feels the pangs of separation at the thought of losing her. She must be feeling guilty of not being able to stay with her mother in her old age. She also wishes for the lost beauty and youth of her mother. So the poem is written in a single sentence, which also indicates the single thread of thought, that is, the loss of beauty and charm and approaching death and decay. So now I'll start the explanation of the poem with stanza 1, which is from Driving to Looked. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me, doors open-mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. So what does this stanza mean? The poet recalls the day when she was driving from her parents' home to Cochin, where she was to catch a flight. It was a Friday morning, and her mother was also sitting by her side. She was going to the airport to see off the poet, but when the poet turned to look at her mother, she found her dozing. So dozing means to sleep lightly for a short time. So now her mouth was open and her face looked very pale, like that of a corpse. So corpse means dead body of a human. A painful thought came to the poet's mind. She realized that her mother had not only become old, but also looked very old in her looks. So now I'll explain stanza 2, which is from But to Her. So what does this stanza means? Firstly, let me read the stanza. Then I'll explain. But soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting, the married children spilling out of their homes, but after the airport security check. Standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. So the poet soon drove away from her mind the thought of her mother's pale and aged face. So what does pale means? With skin almost white, halke peele rang ka. She started looking out at the young trees that seemed to be running fast. She looked at the children running out of their homes in joy. At last, they reached the airport and the poet went through the security check. Now standing a few yards away, she looked at her mother once again. अब कुछ गज दूर खड़े हुए उसने एक बार फिर अपनी माँ को देखा. बहुत गज दूर खड़े हुए उसने अपनी माँ को देखा. So it is to be noted that the poet had not spoken a word to her mother all through the drive, and even now she just looks at her from a distance. Perhaps it is a sad reflection of how indifferent the modern youth have grown towards their aged elders. So now I'll explain the last stanza of the poem. Worn pale as a late winter's moon and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear, but all I said was see you soon, Amma. All I did was smile and smile and smile. So what does this stanza means? After a security check, the poet looked at her mother who was standing a few yards away outside. The mother looked looked very pale and weak. So, what does pale means? With skin almost white, halke peele rang ka. Her face looked pale white, like the face of late winter's moon. The poet felt in her body an old familiar ache. It was like she used to feel in her childhood when some fear overpowered her. Still, she spoke no word to her mother. The only thing she said was, "See you soon, Amma." All she did was smile and smile and smile. These lines convey the idea that the youngers do feel for their elders, but they don't communicate it properly. So, students, we are done with the explanation of the poem. So, students, let us do some questions which are given in your NCERT textbook. So, the first question is, what is the kind of pain and ache that the poet feels? So, what the answer will be? Whenever the poet looks at the colorless and pale face of her mother, her old familiar pain surfaces, realizing that her mother was aging and would die soon. Students, you can write the answers in your notebook if you wish to write. So the second question is, why are the young trees described as sprinting? This question is very, very important for both purpose. So don't forget this question. So the answer will be, the young trees are described as sprinting because when we look at them from a moving car, they seem to be running fast in the opposite direction. So the third question is, why has the poet brought in the image of the married children spilling out of these homes? So the image of the married children spilling out of their home suggests the idea of youth and beauty, in contrast to the ashen-like pale worn face of the aging mother of the poet. This image emphasizes the fact that the old mother has lost vitality, energy, charm, beauty and youth. So the fourth question is, why has the mother been compared to the late winter's moon? This question is also very, very important. So the mother has been compared to the late winter's moon as she is very old and her face is ashen pale and withered. She looks very dull and lifeless like the late winter's moon. So the last question which is given in your NCERT textbook is, what do the parting words of the poet and her smile signify? So the parting words express the poet's optimism. These words console the mother that she would soon visit her again. She smiles to conceal her fear and pain of separation from her mother and gives her aging mother an assurance of survival. So, students, we are done with the explanation and with the question answers of the poem which are given in your NCERT textbook. So, students, after doing the textual questions, let us do some extract-based questions. So, the first extract is, I saw my mother beside me, doors open-mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked, but soon put that thought away. So, what are the questions? The first question is, what worried the poet when she looked at her mother? So, the answer will be, the poet was worried to see that her mother had turned pale like a corpse. The second question is, why was there pain in her realization? So, it pained her to realize that her mother was now not going to live long. So, the third question is, why did she put that thought away? So, she put that thought away because it was a painful thought. So, the second question is, who is I? So, the word I refers to the poet Kamla Das. So, the last question is, identify and name the figure of speech used in these lines. So, the figure of speech used here is the simile, her face ashen like that of a corpse. So, now, the second extract is, and looked out at young trees sprinting, the married children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport's security check standing a few yards away, I looked again at her worn pale as late winter's moon and felt that old familiar ache. What are the questions? The first question is, which thought did the poet put away? So it was the thought that the poet's mother might not live long now. So the second question is, what do the sprinting trees signify? So the sprinting trees signify the vitality of youth. The third question is, what are the married children spelling out of their homes symbolic of? So the married children spelling out of their homes are symbolic of carefree childhood when all time is playtime. So the fourth question is, how can the trees sprint? Trees can't sprint. They only seem to be sprinting when we pass by them in a fast-moving vehicle. So the next question is, why did the poet look at her mother again? The poet was going away from her mother. She feared that her mother was not going to live long. This painful thought made her look at her mother again. So the last extract is, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear, but all I said was, see you soon, Amma. All I did was smiled and smiled and smiled. So the questions are, what was the childhood fear that now troubled the poet? So in her childhood, the poet's heart was filled with fear when her mother was not with her. It was the same fear that overcame her now. The second question is, what do the poet's parting words suggest? So these words suggest that younger ones do feel for their elders, though they may not communicate their feelings openly. The third question is, why did the poet smile and smile? So the poet could not find appropriate words to say to her mother. Therefore, she only smiled and smiled. The fourth question is, what does the phrase familiar ache means? So it means that the pain the poet felt at that particular moment was not a new one. She had felt it often earlier also. That is why she calls it an old familiar pain. The fifth question is, what do the first two lines tell us about the poet's feelings for her mother? So, these lines show that the poet could not bear the thought of separation from her mother. She was always haunted by the fear that her mother would leave her. So, the last question is, what does the repeated use of the word smile mean? So, it means that the poet tried hard to hide her feelings of pain from her mother. So, students, we are done with the extract-based questions. Students, today we have completed the poem with its question answers. If you have any problem regarding any line of the poem, do write your question in the comment section. I'll answer. And if you like my video, do like, share and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thank you.